Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be with you here at the 81st Venice Film Festival. Maybe for people who haven't seen The Book of Joy yet, you can give us a brief introduction. What can people expect when they watch your film?
Well, it's a mix between a noir and a love story. It's set in a desolate town, which is kind of dystopical, but very close to our own reality. And it tells the story of a young woman, an orphan, who's been raised by a priest in a church, lives a very devoted life. One day meets a young boy whom she immediately feels a connection with. That's basically the background and the arch of the story.
What was the initial inspiration? Why did you want to tell this story on the big screen for your feature debut?
Well, I wanted to tell a story that revolved around a very peculiar character, one that would be driven by motivations that we don't often see on film. And I also wanted to tell a love story that would be conveyed through bodies more than words or language.
The particular setting, was there anything in your own background or experiences that sparked the setting and the characters?
I really wrote specifically for the city of Le Havre, which is set in northern France. It's not named as Le Havre in the movie, so someone who doesn't know the city wouldn't really recognize it or say, oh, I've heard that name before. But for me, Le Havre was a very important background because it's such a particular city within the French landscape. It's been totally destroyed during World War II and then rebuilt. So it has this eerie quality about it with its almost brutalist architecture. And since I was looking for a tone that was sort of out of realism, for me it was very important to have this gray urban landscape as the setting of the story.
You know, one of the things that's striking about the film is how atmospheric it is, and it does seem to have a very kind of unique flavor to it. Would you say you were heavily influenced by other filmmakers or films in the look and feel of it?
I do. Actually, the filmmakers that have influenced me the most are not maybe the ones that you can find in direct visual references within the film. For instance, I was very influenced by Pasolini, and also this year marks the 60th anniversary of the screening in Venice of The Gospel According to Matthew. So there's a strange connection between my film and this film that I revere. But for me, what influenced me with Pasolini was a way of telling a story that would not follow traditional storytelling arch, but something more visual and direct. And that was a big influence. I think Lars von Trier also was a director that influenced me a lot. Through his way of directing actors and having them tell the story in a very possessed way, if that makes sense. So that would be, I think my two masters for this film, the Saint Patrons.
Coming to your cast, how did you decide who was going to play each of your roles? And working with the likes of Asia Argento, who's, I know there's a lot of talk about nepotism and things like that in this day and age, but the fact that someone comes from such, immersion in cinema from a young age must bring something quite particular to a film set.
Yeah, absolutely. And the story behind the cast is very different for each of the characters because Sonia Boni, who plays Joy, and I had already worked on a short film that I made 3 years ago called Time's Up. And so we knew each other. I knew that she had both a very physical quality about her and something very interior. So I really liked that complexity about her. Asia, we had met a few years before, but never worked together on a film. And I immediately thought of her when I wrote the role of Mater. And she read the script. She said yes immediately. And having her on set was extraordinary because she has such intuitive experience that she brought depth to the character like instantly, and she built her own world about her, and that was really fascinating. And I was very lucky to be working with her. And Volodymyr Zhdanov, who plays Andriy, it was almost a chance encounter. I mean, we casted in Paris, and he was a student at the conservatory in Paris, the drama school, as a foreign student. He comes from Ukraine and had been in in France for, I think, 9 months or so. And the minute he stepped into the room and started working on the scene with Sonia, the chemistry between them was so strong that we basically stopped looking for someone else.
And on the shoot, what were some of the most challenging scenes to pull off? And on the flip side, did you have a real favorite moment in the making of the film?
The shoot was quite demanding physically because we shot in February and March, and it's very cold in Le Havre. It's right by the sea, so it's humid. There's a lot of wind, and we shot mostly at night, so it was a very physical set, let's say. We had sort of a commando squad more than a film crew in a way, also because there were not too many people on set, which is something I really enjoy. I think maybe the biggest challenge in terms of directing and just putting it together was maybe the crucifixion scene, because it's something that requires quite a lot of preparation, but it was also very enjoyable to film because you don't get to do that every day. I really loved shooting in that church, which is absolutely extraordinary as a space. And I also really enjoyed, for instance, shooting the rave scene, because usually on set you blast the music and you turn it off and the actors pretend they're dancing, and it can be great and sometimes it can be a little bit fake. And we decided to just blast the music all the way through and do continuous shots for like 11 minutes at a time. And the actors, I think, really sort of went into a trance. Yeah, the raw emotion that was conveyed through their body language and everything was really something marvelous to witness.
And in terms of the kind of thematic considerations, perhaps in this day and age, people don't think about, the impact of religion on our lives as much anymore. Or, it's seen as something, relegated to the past of, now we're sort of in a secular society, mostly here in the Western world. But, what was interesting to you about kind of exploring that kind of, that influence or that tension that might actually still be there?
Well, I've been raised in a very atheist household, so I've not been brought up in religion at all. And for me, the film is not so much about religion per se in terms of community rituals than it is about faith in general, the idea of grace and how something very interior can sort of bring you to action, and it can either make you seclude yourself from the world to live only in this very close relationship between yourself and God, as well as it might bring you out into the world to actually do things. And this ambiguity and this, I guess, this subtlety I was very interested in. And so for me, in the end, it's a fable about hope in a desperate world. The world that the Book of Joy is set in is really not too far from what we can experience. And the opening line of the film is hope can never die. And even if the film is at times quite dark, for me, this is like the thread of light that permeates the whole story.
And in that sense, what do you hope people will take away from the film or go out the cinema feeling? And from what reception you've had so far, has it lined up with what you expected?
Well, so far, I mean, I feel it's a very divisive film, maybe. I feel that people either sort of dive into it and embrace it. They sort of go with the flow, not expecting maybe what they thought they would see, which is a really pleasant feeling, I guess, as an audience. Or sometimes some people just stay out of it. For me, this is very good news because it means that something is very impactful about the film to them. And I hope they come out of it with a sense of, oh, I'd never seen something like that, or I'd seen this story before, but maybe not told this way. To me, it's very important in a world where we are saturated with storytelling and film and images in general to maybe not try to tell new stories, because in the end, it's always about love, hate, murder, families. It's all the same thing, but maybe tell tell them in a way that you don't expect, or to see new faces or scenes, ways of picturing things that are a little bit new and out of the stuff we see every day.
What does it mean to you to have the film here at Venice Film Festival?
It's really, I mean, we couldn't have dreamt of a bigger, happier premiere, because it makes so much sense for me. Again, the coincidence with Pasolini is incredible. It means so much also to have Asia in the film and screen in Italy. I think also Italy has such a strong connection to its visual history. I mean, I was telling at the premiere that, for instance, to work with the cinematographer, we didn't watch many movies, but we looked at a lot of pictures, and we came back to art history a lot and to painting. So to be here in Venice, where you see, wherever you see there's beauty somewhere, means a lot.
Do you know yet what you're going to do for your next project? What might you take from this first experience of making a feature onto your next project?
Well, I'm already working on the next feature film with a co-writer, and the story is very different. I think this film was kind of in the dark. You know, we shot like 80% of it at night. The second one will be probably full of daylight and sunshine, set on the French Riviera. I would probably learn a lot from the first experience, but I also think I found my way, in the sense that telling stories through very particular body language, and maybe not so much dialogue as I write when I write for other people, because I'm also a screenwriter for a lot of directors in France, is something I will carry on with me.
What different a feeling is it just writing for a film, but then also directing it? I guess if you like doing both, maybe it stretches different muscles, or is it also like an amazing feeling to see something through from conception to execution?
No, absolutely. And for me, they're totally different jobs. And when I work as a screenwriter, I'm halfway between psychoanalyst and midwife. I try to deliver something that, needs to be functional, to have working organs, and to kind of look alike its father or mother. So it's a very, it's like helping someone give birth to what they wanted, what they dreamt of. And when you work as a director, it's a totally different process, because all of a sudden the things that you thought you mastered in terms of narrative technique or totally disappear, and you're kind of in a more intuitive process. And as a screenwriter, I honestly have no problem to let go of the film at some point and to say, okay, it's your baby. You should rear them in the way you want. And when I work as a director, it's a very pleasant thing to, of course, start the process and follow it all the way through, but also letting sort of leeway for surprise and intuition and imagination, including on set. Because one thing I hate is what I call dollhouse cinema, where you just set up a frame and put the actors in it, and like they're sort of puppets, and say, you go there, you go there. So I try to work within a frame that's somewhat set up, but also gives freedom to the people I'm working with.
Have you ever had it when you've written a script and the end result is nothing like you had in your head, and it's like changed beyond recognition?
Well, in a way, it's always the case when you're starting to work on the script, and then all of a sudden you go through casting, location scouting, an entire shoot, the editing room. But what's strange about it is that it's like a layer that covers the previous one, and which is in a way more pleasurable and enjoyable. And the other very strange thing is that in the end, when I look at my film now, I recognize the very first intuition, which is not necessarily thematical, or for me, it's almost like a an atmospheric feeling about it. And this one is exactly the same, although the images might not be exactly the ones that you imagine as you write, but the essential core is there. And for me, that's the most important thing about directorial process.
And how do you see sort of the health of the cinema industry more generally? I mean, you're sort of, yeah, in France, but also beyond. Are people kind of looking for more inventive ways to tell stories? Do we see too much of the same things in terms of diversity of filmmakers who are having their work screened, whether that's in sort of the more art house world or breaking into the mainstream? And do you feel like we are, for example, with female directors making really good progress, or is there still a long way to go to have sort of parity in terms of who gets the biggest budgets and who gets the biggest platforms?
I feel that we've made huge progress over the past few years. I think it would be unfair to the previous generation of filmmakers to say that the situation is absolutely horrible and that no woman director can evolve in this industry. For instance, I admire a great deal Claire Denis, who for me was an absolute pioneer and who's always led her way through a cinema world which was just full of men. In that regard, I think things are way better, even though I feel there's still a long way to go to be looking at films by female filmmakers saying, oh, it's a film, not a film directed by a woman. But it's I guess we'll go there. And in terms of diversity, I have mixed feelings because I feel we've never seen so much cinema in a way so diverse. But at the same time, I feel that through television, which is both a good and a bad thing, people are very demanding with the plot, and they mostly want stories. And I feel that sometimes the visual aspect of films, or accepting that films are not just about what happens, can get a little bit lost. And I guess the situation is very different from country to country. But I hope, and I'm fighting with the idea that there's a space for stories conveyed through different ways of narrating them, something a little bit different that also takes a step back from realism or naturalism in France, but also tries to have meaning, very simply.
Even for myself as a journalist, I feel like I'm always, flying the flag for pushing for, particularly for female directors. But you're right, even you can sort of then, once some progress has been made, does it become almost counterproductive then to be constantly referring to it? And actually, are you aiming for a world where it's not even the topic of conversation? But perhaps there is still something to be said of just shifting the gaze from being quite so monopolized by a similar type of person. So do you think there's a bit of nuance there in the ways we should even be having these sorts of dialogues?
No, absolutely. And I made a short film a few years ago that screened in the Critics Week in Cannes called La Persistente, which was about a man in the Pyrenees who has a love relationship with his motorcycle. And I remember someone saying very ingenuously, like, "Oh, when I first saw your film, I had no idea it was directed. It could be directed by a woman, or something like that." And I was like, "Why? Because there's a motorcycle, or because it's very sexual, or what do you mean?" And I think now we're making progress in the sense that we don't expect necessarily from female directors to have like a gentle, caring gaze on love, family, and the world in general. But sometimes, as a screenwriter in France, I get a phone call saying, "Oh, we need a female screenwriter right now to step into the project." And like, why do you need a female screenwriter to step in? And often I realize it's because there's a female character that they have no idea what to do with, or they want sort of a female angle. And I think we should use these concepts with care. I'm not saying that experience is universal. And at the same time, I think it's great to have female directors working on badass action movies that, would have been directed automatically by male directors in the 80s or 90s.
I was thinking of Julia Ducournau as well, like her Titane, or, some people might not have off the bat thought that was a stereotypically sort of female led film or female made film, but yeah, it's kind of breaking with some of those taboos, perhaps.
No, absolutely. For instance, this year I'm looking forward to see Coralie Fargeat's The Substance, which I haven't seen yet. I think there are also very strong voices, I think, in documentary. For instance, Alice Diop, who has worked both in fiction and documentary, for me is one of the most interesting directors, female or male, to be followed in the next few years. So. Absolutely, I agree with you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me.
Thank you.
Really enjoy the rest of time here in Venice, and can't wait for anyone else to see the Book of Joy. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.